I'd like to offer the message today, which I titled, Why I Smile So Much. This talk is supposed to be about transformation. In Buddhism, transformation usually refers to the movement from suffering to the relief of suffering, or possibly from the confused state of our usual life to the awakened state of a Buddha, depending on who you're talking to and the context of things. But man, I don't even know where to start with such a thing. It's pretty big. It's pretty big. So instead, I'm going to tell you my story. This is actually the talk I was planning to do for my very first time once I was officially put on the dream team. And I had my first 3 talks all lined up, and it just didn't feel right, and so I gave my second talk first, and that's okay. I'm going to sneak transformation in there somewhere, and you might learn why I smile so much. So I'm going to start with my backstory, my history of transformation, and that story begins with diabetes. So I was 17, and I need a slide or two. I bet Davey's working on it, or Juxta, excuse me. Tricky. Okay. So we'll switch to my parents. There's my parents. That's approximately when I was 17, my parents. Great people. My dad died in 2007. He was always caring, accepting, tolerant, flexible. He loved history, philosophy, sociology, that sort of thing. A lot of compassion. My mother was and is competent, confident, firm boundaries. You know, she was a can-do kind of woman, and there were 3 of us girls and no boys, and by golly, we can do it, because we learned from her how to do that. Beautiful, strong woman. We each got a lot of strength from her. So anyway, I'm 17, and this opportunity to become an exchange student arises, and I went to the Philippines, because it sounded like the one place I'd probably never get to in my life. The other things might be possible. There's a couple pictures of the far, far north of Luzon Island, and somewhere on Luzon Island with the water buffalo there. And I was there for 2 months, and I had been there maybe 2/3 of that time or something, and I was losing a lot of weight despite eating like a horse constantly. And so the next slide, I ended up in the hospital. I'm 5'8". I was 5'8" when I was 17 at that time. So I'll just tell you my personal stuff. Okay, I weigh about 133 pounds, but in high school I weighed 118 pounds. And on that day, I weighed 98 pounds. So the dietitian in the room in the back, she knows. That's a pretty skeletal person. So a lot of people consider, and I did too, the diagnosis of diabetes, and I happen to have type 1 diabetes. There's 2 major types. There are many, many subtypes, but that's pretty suffering. That's kind of a big suffering thing to be slapped with. But I kind of rolled through things fairly rapidly. I stayed there. I was in that hospital for a week, and then I was home in my foster home in the Philippines for, I think, 2 more weeks. I wouldn't let them tell my parents, and I wouldn't let them send me home. So I went home and spent another week in a Michigan hospital. Went to school, and there you go. But you need to know the story before that story. So my next slide shows you my grandmother on a good day. That's my grandma, my mom's mom. She's got an automatic apple peeler in front of her, and she's pretty excited about that. And yeah, she was an excellent negative role model. Some of you know Beth Flynn. That's her statement, and I just stole it. I just stole that statement, but it works. She had diabetes. She was diagnosed when she was, I think, 24, and nobody knows which type she had. It may have been a funky subtype that she had, but they told her that she would live a normal life for 30 years, and she proved them right. She lived a normal life for 30 years, and then took 2 years to die, and she died at age 56, approximately 3 months after my diagnosis. And I had watched her with her candy dish and her pies and her cookies my entire life. And I was pretty determined to not go there. So enough with the slides. Thank you. I became quite determined. I made a vow that I would live opposite to the way that my grandmother lived. I would live like my other grandmother, who did not complain about her various ailments 24/7, who had a wide range of friends, and life was good. Life was good. So I was determined that I would follow everything just right, whatever. And that works for a while until it doesn't, but I had my mother's strength, to hold me up. So what comes of all this is that sooner or later, and actually pretty darn soon in my, it's almost 50 years now, so I've had a lot of time to dance with diabetes. I considered diabetes to be the enemy at first, the annoying neighbor after a while, and that you could ignore, kind of. I still took care of myself, but I didn't think about it, And then it became my dance partner, like Fred Astaire and what's her name, right? And Ginger Rogers, thank you. And occasionally, I would kick Fred in the shin, and sometimes he would step on my toes, but mostly we danced well. We danced pretty well together, actually. And eventually I saw diabetes as my teacher, and I've learned a lot of things from diabetes. But somewhere long before the teacher thing arose, I had this experience of fairly early on that this suffering that I had, and then it wasn't the end of my life, It wasn't the end of my life. So it's like a relief of suffering, but it was more than just a relief of suffering, because here I am looking at reality. It's like, I am 17. Here's what I have in my hand. There's my grandmother showing me excellently, negatively, not do it that way, right? And I know in my bones, because at that time there was only one maker of insulin, and it was the Lilly Company in Elkhart, Indiana. And if that building ever fell in a hole in the ground, got bombed, I don't know, whatever might happen, insulin stops, I'm dead. So you're 17 or somewhere right in that early stage, and you know mortality. And what happens is you find out how precious being alive is, how precious it is. And although I didn't know it then, I was really awake to the present moment. So I came to love every season. I still do. Summer, fall, winter, spring, all 4 of them. I love them. I love and appreciate each and every one of them. Thich Nhat Hanh has a waking up in the morning gatha, a practice poem. Waking up this morning, I smile. 24 brand new hours are in front of me. And I really lived that way for a really long time, this waking up. They call it post-traumatic growth. That's a term. I learned that just like 3 weeks ago. So I'm going along in my beautiful, happy, wonderful life. I've got all the things that I ever wanted. I don't know why, but when I was about 15, I set life goals. I knew what was important to me. We're trying to get those children to figure out what makes them happy, you know. They'll figure it out. Here's what I wanted. It sounds really silly to a lot of people. What I wanted was a college degree, a house of my own, and a family. That's what I wanted. I knew when I was 15, those were the things I wanted. Well, by the time I was 40, I had them all. And diabetes wasn't a problem. That I could have those things without that as a problem. And I kind of went, okay, it's my 40th birthday. Well, what now? You know, not only that, I got from my education, I ended up with a job, and I had a career that I loved. I mean, I was like, okay, but what now? What do I aim for? So I read some self-help books, la-di-da, did some exercises, and I decided that I would be open to cosmic enlightenment. That was the term I called it, cosmic enlightenment. Oh, see? Sharon's laughing. I once told that to a meditation group, and they all burst out laughing. But I just thought, man, I don't even know if this is real. I don't know. But why not? Why not? Why not? Insulin ends, I'm dead in about 2 months, you know? Why not just go for it all? Why not? So that's really unusual because most people come to the Buddhist path out of suffering, not out of what is labeled curiosity. They say that's the two paths that you enter. If you weren't born in a Buddhist path, you either enter through suffering or through curiosity. I don't even call it curiosity, I call it openness. Just being open to it, which I suppose is a kind of curiosity. So, being open to whatever might go to cosmic enlightenment, a yoga class came up. I said, okay, maybe that's a way in. Maybe that's a start. I started yoga. Yoga's wonderful. It brings me to the body, being aware of what's going on in the body, this moment, this posture, that posture, whatever, that kind of thing. And 2 years later, 2002, I went on my first retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh. And that retreat was truly transformational for me. I find diabetes was my first transformation that woke me up to being alive and being so delighted to be alive. Yes, in 2005, it was my personal 30th anniversary of living with diabetes. And I sent an email out to the entire hospital where I worked. Everyone who had a computer got my emails. It said, my 30th anniversary, if you wonder why I smile so much, it is because I am delighted to be alive. Yeah. So that was my first big transformation in my life. When I went on retreat in 2002, and they have this ethical trainings, they call them, mindfulness trainings. There are 5 basic ones. And everybody got a copy of the 5 basic trainings. And I looked at those trainings, and you're invited to receive them, to officially commit to them at the end of the week on the retreat. And I struggled all week. I didn't know if I was able. I didn't know if I was worthy to commit to such a thing. another time we'll read those trainings during my time here. But I decided that if such a life was possible, to live by those 5 ethical trainings, it would be a beautiful life. I already had a life that was, all delighted, but could I have a deeply beautiful life? And so I did accept those trainings, and that was a hugely transformational moment for me. 4 years later, I started thinking about, did I want to take the next commit to the 14 trainings that the people who are part of what they call the core community in this tradition belong to, the order of interbeing. And I kind of chewed on that for 5 more years. And in 2011, I knew in my heart I wanted to join the order of interbeing. It took me 2 years to find a mentor and a teacher, which you are required to have in order to go through the process of joining this order. So in 2013, I finally found those people, and 4 years to work through the process. So in 2017, I became ordained in the Order of Interbeing in a beautiful ceremony in one of their monasteries. And one of the things that happens is you get a brown jacket. The brown jacket is your sign, I guess you'd say, that you are a member of this core community in this Order of Interbeing. There's another step that many people do, which is to become an ordained, credentialed Dharma teacher. And that process takes a lot of time spent in the monasteries and or with monastics and senior teachers, which is frankly impossible in the Midwest. So I haven't done that, but I am allowed, I guess you'd say, encouraged to share the things that I know around me. So my responsibilities include that I need to spend 60 or more days per year in mindfulness. That's an interesting challenge, to be mindful all day. And some things are more conducive and some are not so conducive. But if you can devote 1 day a week to a mindfulness day on your own and then go to retreat for another week or 10 days, you can make 60 days. Another responsibility is for me to build Sangha. It can be, Sangha means a spiritual community. So it can be one that's actually dedicated to the Buddhist path, or it can be other places. And then my other major responsibility is to relieve suffering where I can. And there's no set rules about that. That's just how it is. And the process for doing those things is to look into myself, to relieve whatever suffering is there, to do that first, because that builds the capacity to help relieve suffering for other people, other beings. Mm-hmm. And to see with eyes of compassion. That's part of our process. So there's agata, cleaning my glasses. Okay, I'm cleaning my glasses. I'm grateful for clear sight. Putting on my glasses, I look at all beings with loving eyes. Man, I see a lot of glasses here. What if you said that every time you put your glasses on, or every time you cleaned them? Your heart can open up. It's wonderful. And one of the gifts of my transformations, this whole process, is the capacity to listen deeply, to hear what is said and what is unsaid. Am I good at that all the time? No. But if I am aware that the person in front of me is suffering, I guarantee you, I am listening deeply and doing my very best. So I consider, as I looked back at my life, and what am I going to say about transformation, that receiving diabetes was my first big transformation in my life and really opened my eyes to many things. But the delight of life is a very precious one. I consider the 2002 taking of those initial trainings to be a transformative moment for me. It changed the course of my life. But the path through my Buddhist practice is a continuing unfolding, a continuous transformation of myself and my relationships with all the people around me. There is a moment-to-moment arriving, awakening that is possible for each and every one of us. I'm still delighted to be alive. I still feel the preciousness of life, although not as acutely and not as frequently as days before. It's like, oh, we get used to this being alive, and then we forget. We forget how precious it is. So this preparation has been a wonderful reminder to me. Oh, yes, yes, very precious. And what I am focusing on more in the last several years is the preciousness of relationships in my own home, in my communities around me. It's that preciousness. That's why I smile so much. Thank you for listening to me.